Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another AQColor webinar. My name is Richie, and with me is a man who needs no introduction, but he's going to get one anyway. Colin Smith from photoshopCAFE. Before we start, I have a few updates to share from BenQ. The SW272U recently won the TIPA Award for Best Professional Photo Monitor of 2024. And the 2024 TIPA Award winners were selected at the annual TIPA General Assembly, which comprised editors from publications in 14 countries across 5 continents that are all leaders in the photography and imaging industries. Products endorsed by the TIPA Awards are known to be the best excellent products that have been introduced to the market in the preceding year. So this is a huge praise for us and a great accomplishment. I'm also excited to announce that we have recently released a new addition to the SW line, the SW242Q, very similar to the 272Q, just 3 inches smaller. This one is a 24-inch 2K photography monitor that's now live on our website. So in this webinar, Colin will go through Generative Fill in Photoshop, as well as the new updates introduced in the April 2024 beta. We aim to provide you all with a confident mindset when working hands-on with these new features. So without further ado, Colin, take it away.
Thanks for the introduction, Richie. That was a nice introduction. And we've also got some more stuff that we can show too, because Lightroom and Camera Raw got an update this week, actually just a couple of days ago. And so I'm also going to be including a couple of those Camera Raw features. So lots of fun stuff to look at. So first thing we're going to talk about is, let me just get rid of this bar. There's a bar here. I'm just going to slide it over to the side. There we go. Nice. All right. So the first thing we want to talk about is getting the Photoshop beta. Now, if you're not on the Photoshop beta, it's okay. Some of these features that we are going to be doing are also in the regular shipping version. I don't know why I call it a shipping version, because I don't ship anything, but the same reason, I guess people are still taping, and musicians make records even though they don't make records anymore. Well, I guess some people do. All right. So the beta, this is the public beta, which has some of these new features. You can see up the top, it says beta. So let me just quickly show you how to find that. What you want to do is you want to go to your Creative Cloud. And here we go. It's advertising our whatever is new there. And what you want to do is hit on apps. And I've got another window here, another Zoom window. Let me get that out of the way. All right. So we're going to go to our home here, and you'll see the apps view and then the updates. So let's click on the apps. At the top, you're going to see beta. And so when you click on the beta, there's quite a few different betas here that are available. So if you don't have the Photoshop beta, you'll see install. See, I've already got it installed, so it just says open. If you don't have it, you choose install, and it'll just download it and install it. Now, you don't have to use that, but one of the things about the beta, at least on the Mac, is you can have that running side by side with the current shipping version. So you don't lose access to your regular version when you download the beta. The beta is useful to have, if you want to try out some of these new features, and these are an early preview. So don't expect them to be perfect, because that's why they're beta right now, is to get them into the hands of people, get people testing them, and get people's feedback. All right, so having said that, let me just move that window out of the way. Here we are, we're in the beta. Oh, one thing worth mentioning too, that a lot of people, I'm even hearing this week, hey, I don't have the latest version of Lightroom. It's just going under all apps and choosing the update doesn't necessarily get you there. What you got to do is you've got to choose the view updates. And this will take you to a different window. And then what you want to do is click check for updates. Then that will hit the server and it'll bring down the very latest versions. Because sometimes, even though you've got the Creative Cloud desktop, it might not have pinged the server for a day or two. And then it may not have the very latest versions of the updates. So sometimes it'll show on the main screen, the app screen, it'll say there's no updates. But then when you go into this screen, then sometimes you will see those updates. And I think I had like 3 people just this morning that I helped with that. So it's definitely worth sharing. All right, so let's move on. I'm just going to create a new document. And the reason I'm going to create a new document is because there's a new feature, and it only becomes available either when you open a document or you have a new document open, and that's generate image. So if any of you have played around with Firefly, so even though all the generative AI stuff inside of Photoshop is powered by Firefly, There's another version of it on firefly.com, which some of you may have seen. Let me just go there really quickly just so you can see. Um, this is on Adobe's Firefly site. So if you go here, here's firefly.adobe.com. And then you log in with your Creative Cloud account. All you need is a Creative Cloud account, same with the beta. And then at that point, you can log in and you can go to text for image and you click on here. And some of you may have played with this. So the generate image actually has a little baby version of that is now inside of Photoshop, and it can be accessed in two ways, either from the taskbar, which is this floating bar here. And by the way, let me just give you a valuable tip. If you go here, you'll see pin bar position. And then when you do that, that means it's going to stay wherever you leave it. Otherwise, if you don't do that, every time you click on something, it kind of just gets in your way. It just appears suddenly. So this way it will not move. And the other place you can access it is at the bottom here. You'll see in your toolbar. Now, if you don't see that in your toolbar, which can happen if you're using a preset workspace, what you want to do is go to this three-dot menu here, and then you'll see Edit Toolbar. And this is actually also a kebab menu is also what they call it. So if we click on here, it's going to customize the toolbar. And you'll notice there's that tool at the bottom. See how it went away? When I turn it on, it appears. So sometimes there's new features and you'll see them under the extra tools if you're creating a preset. And the reason for that is because your workspace, if it's an older workspace where those tools don't exist, then they don't load when you have that preset. So if you're missing any of the tools, go in here, choose Restore Defaults, make sure all of those are turned on, click Done, and now you should have all those tools in the toolbar. All right, let's go in. It doesn't matter if I hit Generate Image from here or here, we're going to get the same window. And what this is going to do is this is going to give us literally what is inside of Firefly. Now, this is using Firefly 3. I don't know why Firefly 3 is such a tongue twister. I guess it just is for me. But anyway, a previous version or the shipping version right now is using version 1. And that's why, people look like claymation that are being kind of smashed into the ground. They got 9 fingers in one hand and 25 toes. Firefly 3 is a lot better. Faces actually look like real faces. It can count now. It's made a lot of progress. So this is where you would put some kind of a prompt if you want to create something. Let me do a fun one. I already created this prompt, so I'm just going to grab it. It's more fun to look at this than just typing in, I don't know, jet engine. All right, so here we go. We have a bewildered happy cat curled up on a wooden desk, playing with wires, tangled in wires, and in front of lots of vintage electronic dials, switches, and gizmos, screens, and meters. All right, so at its very basic, you're going to put in some kind of a text prompt. This is a prompt I created just for fun. Now, you can go different styles. So if we choose photo, it's going to render out something that is going to be photorealistic. Otherwise, we choose art. We could go to many different art styles. If you can't think of any prompts or you just want to learn how prompts are written, you'll notice on the side here, you have a bunch of images. So what you could do is you could go to an image like maybe, I don't know, you like this one of the pirate ship. And you click on it, it would say pirate ship under the water with sharks swimming around. Vintage car, desert road. So you can get some ideas of how prompts are built. Mine's maybe a little bit more elaborate. Let me post that back in. We'll do photo. There's other things we can do here. Notice effects are turned on. So I'm going to go here and just clear them out. So I don't have any effects. Now, this is one of the things I've noticed. When you apply an effect previous, sometimes it sticks in that session. So just be aware of that. Now, if we just choose generate, what it's going to do now is it's going to generate it within this space. So one of the nice advantages in doing this in Photoshop is you can set up any canvas size you want and any aspect ratio, and it will generate to that aspect ratio. Okay, that's a fun one. So once it generates, we get variations. So there's 1, there's 2 variations, and there's 3 variations. So you could go through and say, hey, which is my favorite one is maybe this one. If you don't like any of them, just choose generate once more, and it's going to generate again. Now, these are working at 2K. The ones in Generative Fill work at 1K, which is 1024. These are working at double that size right now. So that's the maximum resolution. Hey, everybody, I see you there in the chat there. Good to see everybody. All right, so we've got 3 more variations. And we can say, okay, this is kind of interesting. This is fun, but there's other things we can do with it. And you'll notice that there's two other buttons available here. And the first one is a reference image. So if I click on here, it's going to enable me to use a reference image. We'll talk about that in a second. Or the other one here is the styles. So what it's doing is, even after we've generated it, it's giving us the ability to access all of these options that were in here in the first place. So if we'd gone here and we chose a reference image, notice we get the option there. We could go under effects. The same effects, the same reference images are available from there. Now, one of the things, if we click on here, we also have the ability to go between art and photo. So if we change this to art and you just exit out and then we generate again, we can do something else. Now, some of you might be thinking, hey, I'm a photographer. Like, why are you showing me this? Well, number one, it's cool. But number two, Photoshop is used by many, many different people from many disciplines. Some of them are photographers. Some of them are, different types of disciplines. But as a photographer, this can actually be really good for three things that, we're just talking about generate image right now. I can see three different places. Well, actually four. One of them is to create like mood boards or ideas. So maybe you're thinking about a shoot, you're not sure how you're going to set things up, you're not sure how you're going to do the lighting. You could put that in there and generate some ideas. And then based on those ideas, it could kind of help you with camera placement, lighting, models, set design, all that kind of stuff. The second thing is replacing a background. Maybe your background is really boring, or you're shooting your foreground, but you're going to replace that background. You can generate your background. The other one is maybe you're going to do compositing. So you could use this to generate different pieces that you could use from your composites, that maybe you're going to use for props, or maybe you're going to replace entire things. Like maybe you need a lion in your shot and you don't actually have a lion or access to a lion, so you could generate it. Now, these are some of the things you may have done previously with stock photography. Now, I know I do a lot of compositing. I don't know about how many of you do compositing. I'm sure a good number of you do. And let me ask you, what is the most time-consuming part of compositing? You know where I'm going. Yeah, it's looking for the stock photos, trying to find the right photo with the right lighting, with the right angle. That can take hours. It can be really, really boring doing that. So we can generate, these pieces that we can use. And so there's a lot of different things that we can use generative AI for versus just just generating, cats in space, with rainbow colored spaceships flying through Milky Way galaxies. I mean, there's a lot of practical things we can do with it as well. All right, so let's just move on a little bit here, because I did want to address that because I always get that question. All right, so let's choose photo. We're going to go back and we're going to generate a photo again. Now, let's just give it a second here. So one of the fun things about Generative Fill is it has to, go to the server. It has to go on the web, which is why sometimes it takes a little while. So we watch those progress bars. All right, so here we are. We're looking at these cats right now. But what if we wanted a different cat? Or maybe we actually have a cat that we have in mind. So what we can do is we can use a reference image. So if we can click on here, let me show you a couple of things. First of all, we can use the reference images that they offer us. And let's do this one here because it's pretty obvious, what kind of style we've got. We're going to replace the image. Whoops. Let me not replace the image because they've given us a gallery. So we can choose our own images, or we can choose the ones from this gallery that they give us. So any of these ones, what it's going to do is it's actually going to emulate the style. So let me just close that out. And we're going to generate. So you've seen we've got that just kind of round thing. And let's see what we get. I doubt it's going to give us a round thing, but what it's going to do is it's going to give us the colors and it's going to give us the style. So it's going to influence. There we go. Wow, that's kind of fun. And so look at that. So it is looking at that style. There's our wires on that one there. We had generated wires, but it did put them in the style of what we chose. So you can see how that can affect it. Or the other way, a more practical way of doing it, let's replace the image with one of our own images. And let me just take a second to find it here. because I have everything over the other monitor here in Bridge. And let me just give me 1 second here. Right now, I'm using 3 BenQ monitors, by the way. I've got an SW321 photographer monitor is my main one. I have a 32-inch designer monitor to my left and a 24-inch designer monitor to my right. Okay, let's go to my desktop and grab these reference images. I could show you what I'm doing. I'm just digging through files here. So let's go here and let's look for the reference. There we go. There's a picture of a cat. So we're going to use this particular cat here. So I'm just going to select that. And now we're replacing that with that cat. Now, watch what happens when I generate. It's really quite fascinating. So unlike Firefly, Firefly has 2 different ways of using reference images. One of them is we can use a structure reference, and the other one is a style reference. And so the structure reference will try to copy whatever the context of that image is. The style reference will do what we just kind of saw with that, the purple, the pink kind of, neon, and it grabbed that neon style. But now we're using a photograph. Notice this is the cat. So now it's saying, hey, we're going to use this cat. It's got a pretty funny look on his face. But what's happening with this cat is we are controlling it based on our text prompt, because we've got a bewildered, happy cat. So it has to have a bewildered look because we have chosen the bewildered. The happy is probably trying to smile, and it's curled up on a wooden disc. So watch what happens if we take away curled up on the disc. So right now let's just do a cat playing with wires. And so still using this reference image. So what happens is it weighs it in. And one of the things I'm noticing is if you don't have it in the prompt, the picture takes priority. If you have it in the prompt, it seems to override what's in the picture. So it's really quite fascinating how you can kind of blend the 2 together to get much, much closer to what you want. So I'm going to hit generate now. And then we're going to let it generate its own expression and its own pose. But we know it's going to use this cat. And we know it's a cat. And the background is not going to change. It's still, it's going to be different each time, but it's going to be based on that. Yeah, here we go. Look at this. So now the cat can be sitting up. Now it can have a different expression. And this is actually a lot more like the reference image. So we haven't override the reference now, with the text prompt. So that's something I would definitely encourage you guys to play around with and say, hey, what can a prompt do versus the reference? The reference really adds a lot, and we'll do some more practical stuff. But quickly before I do that, let's go into art, and I just want to show you a couple of quick things. So if we go into here and we could do things like, effects, we can choose different things. There's bokeh, and like, say, example, we want to do a fisheye effect. So let's close it out, and we're going to regenerate. So what it's going to do now, it's going to do it in an art style using that reference and also using a fisheye. And this is just kind of give you a little taste of some of the different types of things we can do with this. There we go. And it's kind of fun, And then if we get rid of let's go from art to photo, and we're going to generate. And then I want to show you something really quite fascinating, where we're going to be comparing generate image with generative fill. All right, so let's do this. This should have a real fun kind of a fisheye kind of photo look. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. I think the fisheye adds a lot to just the hilarity of this. Just makes it just, I don't know, just so much more fun, right? Okay, so watch what happens if I grab this text prompt here. And instead of doing that, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a layer. I'm going to create a brand new layer here, and we're going to hit Generative Fill. So now we're using Generative Fill, and we're going to generate. And it's just going to create a new layer on top. So remember the first one we used Generate Image. Now we're using Generative Fill, which is still powered by Firefly, but the real purpose of Generative Fill is to replace parts of photographs. But I just want to show you just its raw processing power. It's not going to use the reference image because I didn't use it, but look at this. See how it's just not as realistic, right? Let me give you another example. Let's do 3 hats in a row. And I have a reason I'm doing this. Let's do it here. And because remember, I said there was 4 purposes, right? And I only gave you 3 purposes for using generator image. The other 4th purpose of using generator image is you can create your own reference images. So that's a way, because sometimes you create something, you generate, and you're like, man, I really like that, but I wish something was different. I wish it was close, but you can generate your own references that way and then pull from those images. Okay, so here's 3 hats using Generative Fill. And if you look at that, not bad. Kind of quality you're used to. That's an unusual mannequin, but okay. But if we go here and we do 3 hats in a row, and it's not that I can't spell. I can spell, I just can't type. And we're going to do photo, and now we're going to generate. Watch what happens here. So now we're using generative image. Now, apart from having double the resolution in generative image versus generative AI, it's interesting because we just seem to get, look at this, much better results, even though they're both using Firefly 3. Those are obviously not hats, but it's pretty clever. But as you can see, bear that in mind. So if you're generating things like backgrounds, maybe you want to use generate image and then kind of combine them with generative fill for doing different things. All right. So now that we've kind of touched on that, let me show you something interesting. So say I have a model and I want to generate a hat. So here's one of the things. Oh, let's make it a little bit better than that. All right, that's terrible. Once again, I should just use my Wacom tablet. All right, there we go. And we hit generative fill, we just do hat. Now, if I do just hat, it's probably going to generate a flower crown. I don't know why, but it kind of does that lately. We can specify what type of hat we want, but I want to show something interesting here. So we're generating a hat. And almost there. I need to learn jokes, while it's generating. All right, yep. See, I told you it was going to do a flower crown. I guess I've done enough of these to know what it does. All right, so we don't want that. We want an actual real hat. So why don't we click on reference image? And this is one of the newer features, which is just really useful, is the ability to use that reference image. So if we look in here, let me go under my lesson files. I'm going to generate, and then I've created some reference images. Now, here's some interesting things. If I look under the assets here, this one was actually created from generate. I generated this. So then what I did is I created a version of it where I just isolated it. So these reference images work much, much better when they're isolated. There's other hats we could use. There's a hat there that I just generated, that one, and it wasn't on a person. But let's try a couple of them and see what they look like. So if I choose here and I generate again, now I'm using this red fedora hat as a reference. We can start to get much, much closer to what we want. Now, I could have typed red fedora hat into the prompt, but then it would give me any of a million different types of red fedora hats. So let's see how good this one is, because it's kind of like more, there we go. That one doesn't look very realistic. That one looks a lot better. It's got the shadow and stuff on it. And that one kind of, it's got like a, I don't know, 20s kind of a look to it. But as you can see, it's starting to be influenced by that particular hat. If we want to change the prompt, let's replace the image and let's do the one we generated, this woman here. And then we've got that hat there. We're going to use that, maybe more of an Indiana Jones type hat. Now we're going to choose generate again. And you'll notice that just by using that reference, we're able to get very, very different types of results. And let's give it a second. And we're almost there. There we go. All right. And as you can see, it's using that hat. Now, the reason it's sitting high on her head, I'm going to guess is because of this selection. Should have gone a little bit lower. But notice that when I selected it, I gave it space, because you've got to give it space here for the shadow. And that might be why that's so high. So Let me go even lower, partway into her eyes there, and then we're going to generate. So your selection is key. Generative Fill cannot generate outside of your selection. So if you've got things like reflection, shadows, or different things like that that are going to be used, make sure you're creating enough space. And this time we're going to hit Generative Fill, and we're going to say hat. Let's grab that same reference image again. And let's just grab it here and see what kind of a result we get. Now, the results are not always perfect, as you know. So, it just keeps getting better. So the more time, the more they develop it, it gets better and better. And it's definitely very quickly improving over what it was even just a few months ago. All right, almost there. And boom. Okay, so we've got some hats here. All right. So here's another interesting addition. If we are inside, our adjustments here, you'll notice that we have a couple of options here. And one of them is, say, I'm looking at these hats and I'm thinking, I like this one the best, but I want something similar, but not quite that. Now we can click on the menu and we have the ability to generate similar. So when you're generating similar, what that does is it's saying, hey, don't create something wildly different. Create something that looks close to this. And for a lot of you who've been generating stuff and you're almost there and then you generate again and it's something completely random, this is going to kind of keep that random seed a little bit closer, and it's going to help you get more, refine it closer to what it is you're looking for. So this shouldn't generate wildly different hats now. It should generate similar ones to the one we're looking at. Here we go. Slightly different color, slightly different fit. But I'm going to say that first one there, we're pretty close. Now, notice because of the selection, it recreated her eyebrows and a little bit of her hair and her eyes. So is that a problem? Not really. Let's just zoom in. That looks really weird. But one of the beautiful things, we work on a generative layer. Generative layer gives us a mask, and I had 9 Wacom pens a second ago. Here's one. And all you got to do is just grab a brush and we can just paint. My tablet's not plugged in. Let me plug it in quickly. Take 1 second. All right. And there we go. Now it's connected. I'm just going to use this. We can paint away using the mask. There's our original eyes. Painting on the mask with black. There we go. Original eyes. I probably should use a softer edge brush so we can blend it in a little bit better. Let's go here. Yeah, my settings for my Wacom are all kind of not very good right now, so I'm just going to use a mouse. And notice you can bring back her original eyebrows or original eyes. And then what you would do if you were using a pen tablet, you would just kind of blend that in. If you're not, you just drop the opacity down and we can just use a mouse and just blend that in. And now you can get back her original features. So be aware of that too. When you're generating, you can also use layer masks and you can bring back, original parts of images. Because it's so funny because sometimes when people start using generative AI, they just let it do everything. Now, it's a tool like any other tool in Photoshop. Let it do what it does best, but then don't forget to, go in there, finesse it, use your actual, your own skills and, get exactly what you want. Okay, let me show you something that is going to be kind of interesting. Another new feature. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up this particular image here. All right, so one of the things you may or may not be aware of is the ability to expand. I just want to make sure I crop that because we got some weird cropping on there. Let me just crop that quickly. Oh, I see white at the top there. I don't want that. There we go. Much better. Okay, so Generative Expand uses Generative Fill to expand images. And this is probably one of the biggest uses I have for it because I don't know how many times you have a wide photo, you need a tall one, or the other way around, it's tall, you need a wide, or you're trying to get it to fit a particular space, or, there's a little bit got cut off, or you want to expand it just a little bit because you want room for type or whatever it is. There's a million different reasons you want to expand images. And that used to be very, very labor intensive. We would expand the image and then you would clone or try and find a stock photo, drop it in, patch it with different things, and just kind of fill those edges. And it used to be a very time consuming. But now we can go in and we can either just grab the crop tool and we can pull it over, extend it, make a selection, and then Generative Fill. Or with the crop tool turned on under Generative Fill, we're going to choose Generative Expand. This is not a new feature. This has been around. I'm going to show you a new feature in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand this out. And I'm just going to hit enter. Now, what's happening when I'm generating it like this is it's doing all of that in one go because we're using Generative Expand. So we're outcropping. So when you work inside, it's called inpainting. And then when you're working outside of the original image or expanding, it's called outcropping. And those are industry-wide terms, not just in Photoshop. So what it's going to do is it's going to start to generate something of, there we go. So if you're not familiar with this area, this is San Juan Capistrano, the train station there. And so now we've added some stuff. Now, if you have never been to San Juan Capistrano, you might look at that and say, oh, yeah, that looks perfectly normal. If you've been there, you might say, well, you know, it doesn't really look like that. But just be aware of using this in a really famous landmark. Because if you're in a really famous landmark, you expand it, and then you get areas there that don't exist, people will know. In a situation like this, very few people know. I mean, I've been to this station a million times, and I can't remember if the hedge goes all the way there or not. All right, but let's look at something. So when we do this, notice though that we can see a definite difference. Let me select here. This is where we're generating. So if you look at the resolution, look how sharp the resolution is in the photo, and then look over here. See how it's just kind of soft because Generative Fill only generates at 1024 by 1024. So that means it will make a, let me literally show you what it does here. So let me just grab this and we'll just choose a fixed size. Let me just turn off the selection and we set it to 24. So what it will do is it will generate this. And let me just do something really quick. So it will copy, yeah. Let's make that selection. Sorry, back to that selection there. Let me just go in here. I just want to demonstrate something. Okay, so what it will do is it will generate this. And it will generate at this size. And then if you say you've got a bigger strip, what it's going to do is it's just literally going to stretch this to, let me turn that off. It'll literally just stretch it. I mean, obviously it's going to keep it in proportion, but the quality is going to be like that. It's just going to stretch that image to fit that space, that 1024 by 1024. All right, so let's go back to this. So what do we do? Let me zoom in. So if you look at this, maybe look over here. And once again, there's the where it's generated. See how soft that gravel is compared to the gravel here? So what we can do is if you look up on the variation, you're going to see another new button. And this one is an up-res button, or it does a, let's click on it, it does a enhanced detail. Wow, that happened really fast. That was super fast. So if we look at this before, and then we look at this afterwards, it's going to enhance the detail. So what it does is, and as you can see, it looks much more detailed. It looks better. So what it's doing is it's using the super resolution algorithm. So if you're familiar with super resolution, when you would go into Camera Raw or Photoshop, let's just open something in Camera Raw just to show you quickly. So I'm here and I open this image. Let's open this, right click, open with Camera Raw. Of course, it can't. It's a ping. Let me grab this one. Open in Camera Raw. There we go. So we're in Camera Raw. Notice that there's the size of it, 1467 by 2200. And if we right click on here, then we have the ability to choose Enhance. And this is also in Lightroom. So it's in Camera Raw as well as Lightroom. And then when we go here, we see that option for super resolution. So if I choose Enhance, what it does is it upscales it. So if here's a regular image, it's created a new image, and now look, it's now 29 34 by 4400. So this has actually made it fit within there 4 times, which has made it twice the size. So what it's doing is it's using an up-res algorithm, kind of like what you get in Topaz or some of those other things. So it's not generating a high-res image and bringing it back down. What it's doing is it's up-resing using that algorithm, which is actually kind of nice. Number one, it works very, very quickly. And the other thing, it doesn't use any generative credits when it does that. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly starting to get us a lot closer to where we want to get. So that's another useful option we have there. And Don says, if we didn't we have enough time to play, I'm hooked. Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff that we can do on here. All right, so let's see what else we can do here. I'm going to go to, I don't know, this will be kind of fun. I'm just going to merge all of this together and pretend that this is a merged image just for fun. And one of the new options that we have is the ability to generate a background. So if we choose remove background, and this is from the taskbar on a flattened image, it's removed the background, but now notice it has a different option here where we can generate a background. So we could import another background from another image if we wanted, or we could generate. So if we choose generate here, and I don't know, we're going to say City Street. Let's do, that's a weird looking city. Let's do City Street. I don't know. Let's do New York City, Times Square. And then we're going to hit generate. Now what it's going to do is it's actually going to notice it's creating a generative layer underneath our mask. And now it's going to generate a new background. So just give it a second here. And take a sip of water. There we go. And now we have generated a new background. So if we actually turn that off, you can see, you know, the edges of a hair and stuff around here. And so what it does is it tries to actually even blend it in better, which is doing quite nicely up here. Look at that. It's actually doing quite a nice job there. Of course, you know, you can go into the mask, you can refine the mask if you want to, but let's look at the other variations. We've got second, third variation. So you can see it's not bad. But if you didn't want that and you wanted something like, I don't know, beach, let's do Hawaiian beach. Probably not spelling Hawaiian right. Oh, actually, I am. H-A-W-I, not beach. All right, and now I can change it here in the properties panel. And if I hit generate, what it's going to do is it's just going to give us something different. So maybe now we want a beach. So you can quickly change these backgrounds. So this is the generate background option. Almost there. Come on, you can do it. The only problem with demoing this is that, you know, the dead air while we're generating. Look at that, beautiful Hawaiian background. It looks just like a backdrop. Definitely because of the lighting, it's looking more like a backdrop than it is a an actual beach. But let's do a sunny Hawaiian beach, and it might look better. So sometimes you want to just you know, play around with your prompts, modify your prompts, and you can get better results. So you don't always, you know, have to just accept what it gives you the first time. So just be aware of that. And the other thing, you know, I could drop my background in if I wanted to. But let's see if the sunny is going to help us with the lighting a little better. Now, of course, we could match these by using match color, but let's move on from there rather than spending all that time on this image. But I think you get the general idea there. I'm not thrilled with the beach. I thought the city looked good though. All right, so let's do the next thing we want to do. There's a couple more Photoshop features, but before we do, let's look at a couple of the brand new ones in Lightroom. So what I'm going to do is I've got Bridge here right now. And from Bridge, I'm going to open some of these into Lightroom. So why don't I mean Lightroom Camera Raw. So I'm just going to select all 4 of these images and right click, open in Camera Raw, and this will just bring them in. Great. Now, if you're working in Lightroom, once again, exactly the same thing. So let's have a look at one of the things that I really like. You know what? First of all, let's do this. So Generative Fill is available now inside of Camera Raw and Lightroom. And this enables us to get rid of things. It's called Generative Remove. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Remove tool, which is here. This used to be called the Eraser tool or something like that. But now under here, we have 3 different options. And one of them is the ability to use generative AI as well as object aware. So why don't we go ahead and we're going to do that? I'm going to turn on generative AI first and watch what happens. If say I make a selection around that clamp, it doesn't do anything, right? It just does that ring that I did. If I turn on object aware and I make this circle around there, no, of course it doesn't let me. There we go. That's better. See how it just kind of fills it in? That's called a scribble select. So that means I can just basically just scribble on things I want to select. That's very horribly slow. But let it go ahead and do that. And notice that when I did that, it selected the subject because we were using that detect edges. Now, what it does is it takes us immediately into refine where we can add or subtract. So I'm going to add here. I want to make sure I grab her hands. And let's grab her hair and the rest of her head. And this is, obviously you're not going to go around removing the models from most photos, but I just want to show you how powerful this and how well it works. And I've kind of got that. Great. And usually you'll pick up the shadow as well, but in this case, I'm just going to leave the shadow there and I'm going to choose apply. And let's see, something went wrong. Whoops. Well, that was fun. Well done. Let's try it again. Well done, you Camera Raw. Now it did say, yeah, okay, that's great. So this is an early access, which means that it could have bugs, which clearly that does. So let's try something else. Let's try if we can remove the stand. Now in Lightroom, that does work. So fortunately, I don't work for Adobe, so I don't have to be embarrassed if it doesn't work. All right, so let's go here. We've made that selection, and now we're going to hit apply. And maybe, no, for some reason, the Camera Raw does not, maybe because I've got multiple images open. Who knows? Let's just, maybe we're just going to assume it's that. Let's open a different photo, open with Camera Raw, and maybe we'll get more success on this photo. Okay, so let's go here. And by the way, it works very, very well on in Lightroom. So let's select a few areas of this that we want to get rid of. Now, they say if you're doing adjustments on a photo, Adobe is suggesting that what they want you to do is to, first of all, do all your removing first. And the reason for that is if you're using other masks, it's going to work with those masks. Okay, that's just great. Let me cancel out of here. What I'm going to do is I am going to use the shipping version of Photoshop. Because something in that beta, that was the beta version of Photoshop I was using, maybe their camera was not hooked up properly. All right, so let's do this and we'll close down the beta for a second. Let's close this out. And if any of you have ever done demos, you know this happens. All right, so let's go back to Bridge. And why don't we try to open this in Camera Raw now? All right, so here we are in Camera Raw. Let's grab this and let's see if it works this time. Let's get rid of this garbage. And another bit there. And we hit apply. And yeah, I don't know, for some reason, this is just choosing not to. Let me reset. And maybe it's just struggling with me selecting multiple areas at once. So select one and hit apply. Okay, that's going to work. So maybe it was freaking out. No, okay. Well, you're just going to have to take my word for it. When we're in Camera Raw, these do disappear and these remove. I could just show you in Lightroom. You know what? I want to show you in Lightroom because I'm not going to be defeated by this. And so it does work exactly the same way in Lightroom. I'm just resizing my Lightroom on my other monitor right now. So I can drag that in, grab something, I don't know. Let's grab this photo. This will work. And just to show you how it works, we use the basic. Now in Camera Raw, remember this is exactly the same. So say we want to get rid of these people. Let's try that. Generative AI, object aware. Let's go around those people. Great, that selected them. And now we're going to add to the selection. Let's get rid of the confused looking person and this other person and this other person. And now we hit apply. And yeah, I don't know, maybe something is going on. It worked perfectly before. My guess is either something with Zoom is freaking this out, or I would have to restart, which would probably fix it, but I can't do that. So let's just move on to a different feature. All right, so just imagine that that removed things perfectly, which is what it does, and it works well. Next one we want to look at is lens blur. So we've got some updates in lens blur. So if I hit apply, notice immediately it grabs the background and gives it a blur. So we can adjust how much of the blur we want. First thing you will notice if you've used this before is this is no longer early access. This is a shipping feature now. And the quality of the blur is a lot better. Now we can change the way this looks by changing these bokehs. And these, that's a film camera. These are going to represent the different shaped apertures from different cameras to give you a different, see how it changes the way it blurs in the background. And you can see the lights here. The lights are a good example of seeing the actual shape. So I can boost the bokeh. So here's a round. See, the lights will show this. And this is an out of focus effect that you would get when you take a photo. Your aperture, see the shape of the aperture shows up there. And that's literally what gives you these different shapes. And they're based on different types of cameras. On my website, I have an explanation of what camera each of those do at photoshopCAFE. All right, so obviously we don't have anything in the window. We need to add to that window. So we can change this by focus and blur. So if I want to blur, I'm going to choose blur. And then all I need to do now is just paint inside. Let's make the brush larger. And I can paint in here and notice as I'm doing this, it's blurring what you're seeing through the windows, thus giving us a more realistic result. That one there would have less blur, but the blur here already seems a little much. So we can choose visualize depth. And what visualize depth does is it shows us how far or how close something is. The darker it is, the further away it is from the camera. The brighter it is, the closer it is to us. So notice we added the blur in here, and now we can see, how well we're doing it. This will help us. But notice that this area that it's showing here maybe shouldn't be quite so blurry. So we can change the blur amount. As we bring it to the left, it makes it lighter, which brings it forward. As we push it to the right, it makes it darker and pushes it back. So we can literally change the amount of blur and the distance that these areas are. So I'm looking at that area there, kind of matches that. And then, so if we turn off the visualize depth, we might get something that starts to look more realistic, which I think we do. Now, if we go under the blur amount, this will affect all the blurs. But before we do, notice this one bit here. This needs to be blurred, but not as much as the rest. So if we hit a plus button, that means we can grab the blur now, and we can apply a different blur here. And now as I change the blur amount, notice that I can make that closer. So I can make that not as blurry, and now it looks much more realistic. Now blur amount affects all the blur in the entire photograph, the stuff in the window and the background. All right, so that's, let's just click on there. Let's fit that on the screen so you guys can see it. All right, so that's some of the things that we're able to do there with the lens blur. So you can notice that we've definitely got a big improvement on that. All right, another thing that's showing here is on the focus range here. We can change this. Notice we see near and far. This is a new addition as well as the numbers. This is not new, but we can grab this crosshair and we can say, hey, I would rather have this area back here in focus. And so notice we can refocus the image. What it does is it builds that depth map that I showed you. But based on that, we can go further or closer. So we can change the focus after the fact. Now, if we want to make this a more narrow range of focus, we can bring these closer together. And this would be like, working on an prime lens, an f1.4 or something like that. And notice we can make it a very, very narrow area in focus, or we could refocus that. We could change it to the back of the car. So notice how we have really great control over that. And this is the subject, which would be the same as grabbing this and clicking on the headlight would be the same as grabbing the subject here. And that's what it uses by default. So what it does is it uses AI, detects the subject, says, hey, this is area in focus, everything else we're going to blur, is essentially how that works. All right, so we have now shown that. Now, when you're inside of Lightroom, you can sync these settings. So that means you can have other photographs and you can sync those blur settings, and it will detect the subject in a completely different photo, use the same settings, and apply it to each one of the photos. The other thing we can do now is we can create a preset. So if we create a preset, I'm not sure if it does in Camera Raw, but we're about to find out. So if we go here and we say, hey, let's create a preset, yep, we can include the lens blur in that preset, and we'll call this test BenQ, because we're doing the BenQ. And why don't we just turn off none? And all we're going to do is just use the lens blur. So we're applying that as a preset. So that's it. So we're going to close, we're going to cancel, we're going to get out of here. Yeah, let's get out of here. And let's go back, and maybe we're going to grab the one with the helicopter, and we'll open this in Camera Raw. Now, if we go to the presets, there's our test BenQ preset. Let's apply it. And if we look at this, look at that. It created that background blur. So it grabbed all those settings, and now that's part of a preset. So you can make these adaptive presets now that include a lens blur. So if we were to look at the photo before and after, there it is before. It's not bad. It's a good photo. And then afterwards, this is actually Grand Canyon. It was a helicopter tour. And of course, you can still go through, you can refine this, you can choose visualize depth, you can fix this, the any issues in here. So it's fully editable still. So it's kind of nice. And let's turn that preview off. Let's go back here, visualize depth off, and then you would, just do all your other adjustments, like maybe fix your exposure, highlights, shadows, make your overall photo look better. All right, so you can see we can do that. Let's close out of there. Now, a couple of other quick updates inside of Photoshop. Let's do a couple of non-AI based updates. So we're just going to launch the Photoshop beta again. I'm going to quit that. Now, some of these are inside of the Photoshop beta, and some of these are in the regular Photoshop. I'm just going to open this, and let's just get an image in here just so we got something to work with. All right. So one of the things is for the designers out there, when we're doing, let's do some, it's so funny, we would, I told you I can't spell. We were just talking about typography. I was with Richie right before this. It's actually kind of funny. So, so you're here and you're just putting in a font here, and let's make it white. And you're like, okay, I want to change this to a different font. So you go up under the font menu, obviously, and we click down here, and you'll see all the installed fonts. And as you roll over them, you can see them. But what if there's a font that you don't have on here, and you want something different? Well, here's the thing. If you choose more fonts, what this does now is this goes up to Adobe fonts. And now all the fonts from Adobe fonts are all here. So this is really fun. So that means, we could go for something like, I don't know, let's find something like a friendly or a fun, funky, futuristic. What have we got here? Let's do a fun. So we can choose a fun font, and then it's going to load up, and it's going to look at all the different fonts from these different families, and it's going to find them here. What have we got under there? Cursive, maybe? No. Funky. All right, so maybe you wanted something like, I don't know. These are pretty funky for sure. I don't know. Maybe you want that one. So what it does, now that you select this, it's actually going to upload this font, and it's going to put it inside in this font. I guess that's what it's called. So 8 heavy. So now it's going to be, if we go to your fonts, it's going to be in there now. So we'll download it to your computer automatically, and it'll make it available for other Adobe products. So you could go in there and you could access those fonts. So that's a big thing for people that need that. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do that I'm going to finish with, because I know we're about out of time, and if you guys got any questions, maybe throw some questions in there. One of the things we can do is we can go under our adjustment brush. Now, there's some people, the adjustment brush it's interesting looking at different reactions. Some people absolutely love it, and other people are like, I don't see the point because it's just, an adjustment layer of a mask, which it is. But if you're a newer user to Photoshop, maybe you don't know how to use that, or you're not familiar with masks and adjustment layers yet, it's a good way to get there. But even if you are, it's a fast way to get the result you want. So if you look under here, a ton more of adjustments have been added, including useful ones like levels and curves, which were not in the previous version. So this is a new update. So we can say, hey, you know what? I want to apply a curve, and I want to apply the curve adjustment. I don't know. I'm going to paint with this to the whole bottom of this image. All right. So I'm just painting to the bottom part of that image. Notice what it does is it creates a curve adjustment, and it gives you the mask of where you were painting. So now you can go in here and you can adjust this. Looks like the blue channel's got an adjustment to it. So let's go there. We can bring that down. And, as you can see, it looks like the green channel has got some changes in there too. So let's bring that down. The red channel probably does as well. Okay, yeah. So we got those in those 3 color channels, no problem. And so we just go to the RGB, and now we're just adjusting the brightness. The reason that weird setting was there is because that's what I did last time. So we could, darken down that part of the image. And if we say, hey, I want to darken down the ground here, but not the horse, well, we could grab our selection tool. Let's do an object select and just go, whoom. Should have grabbed the horse layer. That worked quite nicely. Grab the mask there, and then we can just use that mask we just created to paint it away. So just grab a black brush, and just works like other masks. Just make sure opacity and a flow and everything's up. Just paint it away. Control D, and so now we've darkened the ground, and not that just using that adjustment layer. But the nice thing about that adjustment layer is you can paint it on to add it, or you can remove it. All right, so we've definitely hit some things there. Any questions there? Did you see there, Richie?
We had a couple questions come in. So this one, can you adjust the position of the hat within the selection? This was referring to when you're adding the hat on the blonde model. Can you adjust the position of it, like higher or lower, etc.? And are you able to use the move tool on it?
Yes and no. You can. Let me show you. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let me show you. There's a little trick I have, which I call a donut selection, which will be its official name from now on. Let me show you. So by default, you can't. Let me just generate this really quickly. And I'm going to grab my generative fill, grab my reference image here. Let's grab a hat. Doesn't have to be perfect. Let's grab this hat here. And we'll just type in hat. So this is just to show you guys how this works. Doesn't matter what kind of hat we get. You'll get the idea. All right, so it's generating. So by default, the answer is no, but I have a trick. And almost there. You can do it. There we go. Okay, so we got a hat. Let's grab that one, that one. Oh, that was weird. We'll start with this one. And so if you look at this, when generative, it generates around the area that you selected. So what I want to do is I want to select just this area in between. I mean, I could probably do it actually, now I think about it, the magic wand will probably do that. Yeah, the magic wand will select that. Okay, so I could just easily just do it that way. But the other way that I wanted to show you is, let me move it. Let me show you. So say the hat, we want to bring it lower. Okay, hat's going to be an interesting one. But let me grab the mask here, and there we go. Oh, there we go. I just did it. But, but what you can do is if you select the area around here, it's probably not a good example because it doesn't have a busy background, but you could select that area around there. And then what you would do is make sure we don't have the eyes selected. Let me just take those out of there. And at this point, all you need to do is just hit generate and leave it blank, hit generate again. And what it will do is it will look at the background and it will regenerate not the hat or the subject, but the area around there, and it will make it match. And the reason I call it a donut selection, because you're selecting the donut around the object. In this case, you're not going to see anything because it's a plain background. But if it had a background that, was a busier background, you would see where it didn't fit anymore. So when you generate, what it does is it literally generates a new background and just makes it kind of blend in. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then with the generated background, can you move the subject around in the background?
You could. You're going to be using the mask. So, but that's a good question. I'm not sure if it's going to generate the entire background around it. You might not be able to. Let me have a look. Why don't we try it? Remove background. And now, if that was something you did want to reposition, and what you would do is you would just make a selection or just use select subject, copy it to a new layer, and do it that way. But I'm curious if that does. So let's generate the background and see if it generates a full background or just around there. Otherwise, I would do it a different way. But let's have a look. Yeah, so one of the things that doesn't automatically, and none of the generative stuff allows you to automatically move anything. You have to kind of, if you move it, you've got to kind of fix it. Let's have a look, see what it does here. Does it generate a whole background? I'm curious. I think it might. No, it just decided it would make a hole in there. How useful. I mean, I could easily move it, be super easy. You just make a selection. Let me clear my selection. I'll show you how you would do it. So obviously, let's have a look here. Let's see if we get a, that's not a very exciting background, is it? But let me see. Turn off the selection. What have we got? Okay, so here's the thing. If I move this, it's going to leave a hole. So, you can always use generative fill in here to fix the hole. So if we just hit generative fill here, we could just generate fill. So the way I would be inclined, if you think you're going to move it, what I would do is I would use generate image to generate a really nice background because it does better than generative fill, and just use select subject and then just reposition your subject. But you'll see here, this is how we can do it. And this should just fill that up. Yeah, there we go. So now it fills up the background and we can put, we can move them wherever we want now. But it's interesting. I don't know why it doesn't create that on a mask with a fully generated background. Maybe it helps it blend better. That's probably going to be my guess. Probably for edge blending. Yeah.
Okay, then a question from Shannon. She says, do you have any thoughts on working with TIFFs? Her Canon camera has dual pixel camera raw, but that has to be processed first with the Canon software and then export it as a TIFF before working in Photoshop or Lightroom.
Working with a TIFF.
Yeah, I think that's the is that the iPhone picture?
No. TIFF is a lossless format. But so if you're shooting in RAW and then you're bringing it in, what I would do is I would probably just process it in Camera Raw or in Lightroom, and then bring it in as a smart object. And then if you bring it in as a smart object inside of Photoshop, it will work just like a non-destructive, like a TIFF or a PSD. But at any time, you can double click in that smart object and it will take you into Camera Raw. So you still have access to the raw data. So I would work that way. If you, for some reason, have to convert it to a TIFF before you are opening it in Photoshop because you can't open the raw file, maybe your camera's not supported by the raw processor. In that case, just make sure you do a 16-bit file so you maintain as much detail. But I would open it from Bridge in Camera Raw in Photoshop, or if you have Lightroom, right click on Lightroom, open in Photoshop, and in that way you can do all your edits and maintain that rawness because you want to keep that as long as you can, because you'll lose dynamic range otherwise when you change it.
Okay, then I had a couple questions of my own. So when you use generative fill, uh, what situations do you prefer that over something like clone stamps or the spot healing brush?
That's a great question. So a lot of the stuff that we gen fill could be done with the remove tool or content aware. But the other tools, what they do is they sample what's within the image already. So the gen fill is great for areas that when you're trying to generate something that does not exist in a photograph. So like say, for example, here, if I was trying to remove the cowboy, that transition area, between the trough there and the stair, content aware fill just wouldn't be able to do that. Because it can only sample from what's in the image already. So generative fill will generate that transition area. Now, things like removing this, content aware fill would probably do a good job of that. The remove tool would. So the advantages of the remove tool, let me just show you quickly, because I don't use content aware at all anymore, because um, now we have the remove tool and generative fill. So the remove tool to me replaces content aware fill. So let me show you. So I make a selection and it's going to remove this area. So this is not working on the cloud. It's working locally. It's not using generative credits. It generally is working much faster. In this case, it's quite slow, probably because I've got a million windows open on my computer and I'm streaming is going to be my guess. Because normally this works extremely quickly. It could be all these different layers, the generative layers are slowing it down. There we go. So let me just hide those other layers quickly. And if I remove after each stroke, look at that. See what a nice job the remove tool does? So for smaller things like this, I would use the remove tool. And normally it's done by now. There we go. And see how it just does a beautiful job. But as far as, some of these larger areas, that's when you're going to use generative fill. Now, one of the disadvantages of, once again, is generative fill doesn't always work at full resolution. So sometimes you can do the gen fill and then use the remove brush to fix up certain areas. That's another kind of way I would approach it. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned the low res generations when generating a background. What are some areas that these new features still need to work on?
Well, the big area is resolution. And that's just because of the sheer computing power. So when we say we take generative fill and I grab that area, what that does is when if I want to remove something, by the way, just leave it blank and then hit generate. So when I'm hitting that, what it's doing is it's taking that, it's sending it up to the server farm at Adobe in the data center, and it's processing it. And it takes a huge amount of processing power to do generative AI. And you can imagine, thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of people all doing it at the same time. It's incredibly that's interesting, processor intensive. All right, so we replace it with a different person. Um, and that's why the resolution is limited, because even if we were to double it to 2K, that's going to double that. And it doesn't seem like much when you're one user, but when you think about the mass amount of people using it at the same time, it's absolutely crazy. And it's the most used Adobe feature ever. The generative fill has been used more than the crop tool. So it's being used a lot. So in order to get the extra resolution, it's not necessarily limitations of what they can program, it's a limitations of what we can transfer. Because you imagine if it's this slow right now, and you've got 200,000 people hitting that server at 5K, you could imagine what would be going on with that. It would take forever because the pipes would just be so clogged. But one of the things the Adobe has publicly said is the generation, they're working on the resolution, and that will be something they'll have in the future. And from what I gather from what they've said publicly, I don't know any of this NDA stuff, I mean, I know some NDA stuff, but this is not NDA. This is purely speculation on my part, is that we will generate something, and then similar to this, one day we'll click, and then as we hold down our mouse button, it'll give us different resolutions, and we'll choose the resolution we want, and then get those high resolution results on demand. I mean, I don't know if it's going to work that way. That would be my guess. It's probably how I would do it. And I don't know if it's going to happen 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, who knows? But right now, that is the biggest limitation, is matching resolution when it comes to print. Now, there's ways to get around it. I've just did a tutorial a couple of days ago. I saw my YouTube photoshopCAFE, where I show that you can create a square, create a generate, and then you can generate pieces and get an extremely high resolution result. And I even created an action to do that, so I don't have to manually do it. So there's workarounds.
Awesome. Thank you. We got a question from Steven. He wants to know about the ethics around all this, because this is the worst AI is going to look. It's only getting exponentially better as every day goes. So, what do you think about the ethics on all this?
Okay, so that's a almost a webinar in itself, but in a nutshell, there's a couple of things, right? So number one, personal. How do you personally feel about it? Are you a hobbyist? Are you a professional? If you're a hobbyist and you feel like, hey, this is not art, then don't use it. Just keep working the way you always have, because you're doing it for fun. You're not doing it for profit. Or if you don't care, you're just like, hey, I want to get to the result, then in that case, you're having fun. If you're working professionally, um, I use generative AI all the time, but I'm not generating my subjects. Like, I'm not, creating. And if you are, that's fine. That's an art form in itself as well. It's a new emerging art form where people are generating completely from scratch. And you can put a lot of work in, like creating prompts as an art within itself. Like, you can actually develop your own style of prompt, or generating pieces using your imagination and your creativity. You can do that. So it doesn't mean you're unskilled when you're using it. It just means you're using a different skill set. Now, the other side of it, where I mainly use it, is just for fixing things. So most of the stuff I'm still doing the same way I am, but I'm getting rid of distractions quickly. I've got a scanned book and I want to get rid of the middle, joining it. I'm expanding. I'm using it as a utilitarian tool a lot. So I don't really see that's any different than clone stamping, except you're doing it that way. Then there's generating the images from scratch. There's the whole side of it is, are you trying to pass this off as real work, or as people call it, real work when it's AI? You're trying to pass it off as being real, as an actual, this is a photograph versus AI. So then there's a content credentials that Adobe has that actually builds it into the image. So if you go to the Creative Commons or the Creative, I forget, Andrew Kevnar would know if you put that in the chat. I just slipping my mind right now. And you can put an image in there, and it will show if AI is being used. Authenticity initiative, that's what it is. Content authenticity initiative. And so it's actually tagging it AI. So when you use the tools, and also if you're manipulating anything inside Photoshop, it's doing that. Then there's the other thing, is like, what is it trained on? Like DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, like a lot of the other AI generators are just going on the web, ChatGPT, and just basically just harvesting everything off the internet. And personally, I think, yeah, that is unethical, because you're stealing the work, or they're stealing the work of other people. So there's a big thing there. There's definitely some lawsuits and stuff going on, and so ethically in that area, it's kind of like, if I generate something that's been trained on something I don't own, that's like going in Google Images and just grabbing images, just think, oh, I found it on Google, but it doesn't mean it's not copyrighted. Then Adobe with Firefly is trained on all the images from Adobe stock. So there's millions of photos. So they're, rather than just training on everything they could possibly find, they're training them on images that they have the rights to. They're working on a way to compensate contributors, and also they're training it on public domain images. Now, there is a new thing that just kind of came out recently that they found about 5% of the images that Firefly's trained on are from Midjourney. And not because they were generated Midjourney, but because they were generated Midjourney and submitted to Adobe Stock earlier on when they didn't necessarily have the tools or even the knowledge to know that some of these were AI generated. So that's something they're kind of working their way through. So in a nutshell, that's kind of maybe 3 different areas on ethics, but it's a big discussion that's going on right now. But those are my thoughts on that.
Well said, Colin. That was a terrific answer. Thank you, Andrew, for linking the content authenticity initiative into in the chat. Yeah, I think the biggest issues people have are disclosure and reliance. I think there will eventually be laws around AI, just given how controversial and rapidly developing it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They're trying to get it done right now. Yeah, there's definitely going to be rules and laws. I would say Europe will probably put them in first.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up for the questions. Thank you for giving us such an in-depth look at all the ways of using AI to augment our work, Colin. I hope everyone's feeling super inspired to jump into Photoshop or Lightroom and experiment. And thank you, everyone who joined, for commenting where you're from. And it's really exciting to see where everyone's tuning in from. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you.